we're in a very strange mood, so you're going to have to bear with us tonight. You are listening to Studio A, and my special guest this evening is John Savage. And John hasn't been on the show for a while, and I'm so glad to have him back on. Let me get you his bio. John Savage is the founder of the Minnesota Paranormal Investigators, formed in 1991, which is the longest-running paranormal group in the state of Minnesota. And he is also the founder of his new group, Virginia Minnesota Paranormal Investigators, which is located in Virginia Beach, Virginia. He has over 27 years of experience as a paranormal investigator and has helped train members of several paranormal groups in Minnesota and the upper Midwest. He has been featured in several books and was a consultant for the movie Ghost from the Machine in 2010. He has investigated many locations across the United States, including the Sunken Mile Battlefield, Fredericksburg, Virginia, the Historic Mounds Theater in St. Paul, Minnesota. Say that 3 times, Minnesota, and many other locations in the upper Midwest. He has also investigated several locations in England and also in Cyprus. John uses a very logical and detailed approach when it comes to investigating a location that is presumed haunted. He looks for a normal explanation and examined evidence with a critical eye before jumping to the paranormal realm. John also became an ordained minister in 2012, and it is with great pleasure we welcome John to the show this evening. Good evening, John.
Good evening, and thank you for having me back.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you on, and I know we were in the background talking, so if you heard all that subliminal stuff in the background, guys, we couldn't hear a blasted thing with the music playing, so we were just making jokes. So anyways, that's always fun, you know?
It's going to be a fun night. I can see it coming.
I can see it coming, too. You know, I wish that we could do a ghost hunt together. I don't know if you call it ghost hunting. What do you call it, paranormal investigation?
Yes.
Okay, I want to be polite about that. But yeah, it would be fun because, boy, oh boy, that would be a blast. But anyways, tell everybody what you've been up to. It's been a while.
Yes, it has. I've been out of the field for about a year or so since I moved down here to Virginia. You know, had to take a break, kind of recharge my batteries. You know, there's been a lot of changes in the paranormal field, both good and bad.
Do you want to elaborate on that or no?
Well, I mean, it's just more of a lot of drama that's been going on in the paranormal, especially with the TV shows, other paranormal groups. It's kind of lost its pizzazz for the past couple of years. Yeah. So I had to get away. I had to take a break and kind of regather my thoughts, kind of redo my long-term goals, you know, trying to change some ideas of how to investigate. Mm-hmm. So
well, that's good. No, it's a good thing to do. Take a break and just kind of recalibrate. There's nothing wrong with that. I'd like to do that sometimes. I need to go into my hibernation chamber. You know, I keep wanting to do that. At some point I will. But I think that would be in Antarctica. I keep telling everybody, you know, the only place I can get away would probably be someplace far, far away from everyone else. So that would be it. But so you'd started a paranormal investigation organization over there where you're at right now. Are you doing anything active with that? Was that part of the break? You just kind of organized it, but just kind of left it?
Yes. I mean, I was going to try and hook up with some paranormal groups here in Virginia, but again, with some of the drama that's been going on, it seems like, at least here on the East Coast, that a lot of the groups are they keep to themselves and they don't want to share.
Oh, really?
Especially if it's someone who has a lot of experience. They don't want to deal with that type of person. So I decided I just decided, you know what? I've got my group out here that I'm going to try and form. I'm going to take a break because I don't want to copy what I've already done back in Minnesota. I want to do something different and go in a different direction with this group.
That's great.
Where back in Minnesota, we would investigate, you know, homes that are haunted, you know, old battlefields in Minnesota, just the typical haunting stuff. Where here in Virginia, with the history, I want to now focus more on the paranormal historic side of it.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I want to know the backstories of, you know, like some of the battlefields that we have around here are quite haunted, which is great. But I want to make contact with a spirit that I can verify through records, through research, that the spirit fought with, let's say, the 7th Virginia Infantry or Volunteers. I want to get a name. I want to hear the story. And I'm hoping that the spirit world will allow me the opportunity to tell the living world about their experience of being a soldier, the historic side of it.
Oh, that sounds good. Yeah, definitely. Well, I like the historical sites. There's no doubt about it. Now, have you been using any different technologies or instruments? What are you using for an investigation?
Well, right now I'm still using all my EVP recorders.
Hmm.
I still think that's the key to the investigation. But I also use the XCam, which is the SLS camera system, which is kind of like the Kinects.
Right. You were telling me about that the
Yep.
last time you were on the show. So how's that working out?
You know, I would have to say of all the tools that I've have in my tool case, that is one of the best ones
Nice.
because it will give me real-time information, and if there's an anomaly there, it will show up.
Very
And that
nice.
helps that will help us during an investigation because we can focus in that location and we can start asking questions or try to interact with it.
Hmm. Exactly. What was that? Your bell I just heard, or was it my imagination?
No, that was my bell. That
That's
was
your iPhone.
that was my wife telling me she made it to work.
It's okay. I have the same bell on my phone. I was looking around like, what? No, it's funny.
But
Oh,
the
go
other
ahead.
tool that I'm using, and I know this person gets a lot of flack in the paranormal field, but it's from Huff Paranormal,
Hmm.
and it's a device. He calls it the Wonder Box or the Portal, and he has an app that you can use on your phone to do ITC experiments with,
Mm.
basically EVPs, and I'll have that running in the background while recording an EVP session, and I'll get voices through that device.
Very
Which,
interesting.
which I have issues with any type of apps that a
Hmm.
person can download.
Right.
This one, I feel that there's stuff to it. It can be
Hmm.
used if you're using it correctly and you're documenting what you're doing. It can be used during an investigation.
Very interesting. Do you know what frequency you operate on when you're using your EVP? Just curious.
Geez, anywhere from 1500 hertz all the way down to 7 hertz,
Is that right? Okay.
somewhere around. It jumps around.
Okay. I
Of
was always
after.
curious, are you picking up like cell phone conversations from the person or something next door, or you actually are? Where do you think this is coming from? In your opinion, where do you think these voice patterns are coming from?
You know, a couple of years ago, I would think that I thought it was from the spirit world, and I think some of it is from the spirit world. But after doing some more research about ITC and reading up on some of the experiments that Tesla has done,
Hmm.
I think that some of it might be dimensional. Some of it might also be on, if you're looking at ETs.
Hmm. Right. Yeah, that's highly possible. There's no doubt about it. I was always curious because I do know that we have so many different radio waves that connect in and out, and it's always interesting to see what this technology can pick up on. I know we have a question over here, real quick. Have you ever done any investigations of the Cavalier Hotel and the ghost of Bush president? And the president of Bush Beer jumped out a window of the hotel and wonder if he's looked into that, if you've looked into that. Does that sound familiar?
The Cavalier Hotel, the one I think they're talking about, is one in Virginia Beach. Beautiful, beautiful building, which they're now making it into, I think, some sort of long-term senior citizen type residence.
Mm.
Um, I've tried to get in there while they're doing construction, and the answer is no.
Mm-hmm.
But I've heard about it, and I'm hoping maybe with the constructions that's been going on in the whole building for the past couple of years, has stirred a lot of stuff in that building, and I'm hoping someone will come forward and say, "Hey, would you come in and take a look for us?"
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, it'd be very interesting. I know that when they do construction, usually you get a lot of activity, especially if there's a previous host or some kind of a ghost there. Yeah,
Yep.
usually they have some kind of activity going on. That's very interesting right there. Well, it seems like you have a lot of spots that you can look at when you're down there, when you feel like investigating. There's no doubt about that.
Oh yeah, there's a couple places which I'm gonna hopefully this year I'm gonna get into, like
Mm-hmm.
the Bacon's Castle, which is up north of us.
Nice.
I have a friend of a friend who works at the Jamestown settlement,
Mm.
and I've been asking really nicely and dropping hints if they will allow me access, just me by myself, a couple of hours after the park closes.
Well, that'd be nice.
That would be awesome. The first settlement in America at Jamestown. And there's bodies buried all over the place there.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be really neat to get an EVP or some sort of evidence that's haunted of the first settlers.
Right. And I know I probably asked you this before, but what about cemeteries? Do you go into cemeteries at all? Some people don't. Are you one to do that or no?
I do. I love
Okay.
going to cemeteries.
Okay.
Most of it, I love just driving around, trying to find people with my last name. But
Oh,
also,
interesting.
it is, and plus, I love looking at it 'cause there's so much history. It
Right.
tells you about the area.
Mm-hmm.
And here in Virginia Beach area, there are so many cemeteries. There are graveyards in people's backyards, in the middle of farm fields,
Mm-hmm.
um, on side of the roads, but in bushes. Maybe it could be one headstone, could be two. They're all over the place. And I will stop and walk through a farmer's field to look at two headstones just for the fun of it, because it's a piece of history.
Oh, yeah,
That's
absolutely.
and especially with these old headstones from the Civil War and before the Civil War. These are people that time has forgotten, and I feel so bad when I see these headstones covered with weeds and no one's taking care of them. It's like
Mhm.
these people have been forgotten.
Yeah, that's very true. I wonder why. Why is it not maintained? What's the problem?
I don't know.
It's interesting.
I don't know, but it's really neat when you're driving through the back roads of Virginia and you
Hmm.
come across these old cemeteries. There's one that I just saw a couple weeks ago right next to a house. It was a family cemetery. It had
Wow.
6 headstones in it, and out of the six, 3 of them were infants.
Hmm. Very interesting.
And the house
Yeah,
is abandoned. It's falling down.
that's a shame. I think they'd want to restore some of these things.
Oh yes. And of
Seems
course,
like they're letting it go.
when I see these old abandoned houses, I've got to pull over with the wife and grab the EVP recorder, and I'm going in.
And you have a lot of EVP recordings, right? I mean, from all this stuff. I know that you sent me some in the past that were just mind blowing.
I think the last time I organized all my files, I had close to 1,700 really good EVPs.
Yeah, they're really good. I mean, they're better than the stuff that I've heard from other quote unquote
Oh, thank you.
investigators. Yes, they are. And I mean, because some people say, "Well, can't you hear it? It sounds like this," and I'm like, "No, it doesn't sound like anything." But you actually do get a lot more clear. You get a lot of good information, I think. But you have that knack, and I think you have an. We were touching about the, or we're talking about this off air, but you have this professional side to you that most people don't have in the investigations with this, and that's what really shines through, I think, with your work.
Yes, thank you. I mean, it's taken me many years to really perfect my investigation techniques. When I first got started, I would go to a house, I would do some EVPs, I would look for some EMF, do the questionnaires with the clients, and then base my determination off of that, if the location's haunted or not. Now, I treat every investigation almost like a crime scene. You have to be very detailed in your approach. You have to document everything you do, from photographs to EVPs to setting up trigger objects.
Mm-hmm. What's a
It
trigger object?
Trigger object can be anything from, let's say, taking some baking powder, putting it on a table, and put a coin inside that baking powder, and having the spirit move the coin.
Oh, okay.
And the way to tell if the coin moved is it would move the baking powder or the baby powder. You can use whatever. You can see it being moved. You can see a trail.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. I've never heard of that before.
Yep.
Wow.
Um, you know, just documentation, and you
Mm-hmm.
can't do it all in one night. A good investigation would take at least 2-3 months to fully investigate, to get a good baseline and the research. And then
Mm-hmm.
from there, you can start your true investigation.
Right. I agree with that also. Yeah, there are a lot of people that come in and they just go real quick and get a few whatever EVPs here and there, or maybe they don't get the type of activity they want, but they just leave and move on. But I think you're right. You have to maintain some kind of a presence there for a while to really thoroughly research everything.
Right. And that's a problem with a lot of the paranormal groups here in America. They want to do all these investigations. And I keep telling these groups, it's not the quantity of investigations. It's the quality of the investigation. You know,
Right.
yes, we would do it with my old group, Minnesota Paranormal. We would do it, you know, maybe a 3-week investigation. But most of the time, our investigations will last 6, 7 months to 4 or 5 years
Wow.
to really document the location.
Mm-hmm. That's impressive, really. That's very, very interesting. And of course, you're taking photographs as well, right?
Oh, God, yes.
Yeah. Now, do you do video or just regular photographs?
We do the video also, and we use
Mm-hmm.
that as part of our baseline investigation, our master copy.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, let's say we're investigating a bedroom that's supposed to be haunted. We will leave the camera on from the moment we get there to a few minutes before we tear down, because we want to capture everything and anything that will happen in that location,
Right.
including, you know, possible fraud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
that's good.
you know, sometimes we'll use our really big video cameras, our security cameras. Other times we'll use very small wireless cameras.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we won't tell the client that we have a camera running just to see if there's fraud being committed.
Have you ever run into that where there people are doing that?
I ran into a couple of former team members who's
Oh.
committed fraud in the group.
Oh, wow, that's terrible.
But you know, they were kids. You know, they were in their
Yeah.
20s, and you know, they watched these TV shows like, you know, Ghost Hunters and Ghost Adventurers and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And when nothing happens, they want to try and fake something to make it seem like something happened.
Right.
So, you know, it's crucial that we look at stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. No, I'm glad you're doing that. Now, when you use a regular photography, say you take a picture, do you use the old Polaroids? I've heard that sometimes the old-fashioned cameras are much better than the ones that are of today.
I'm still a fan of the 35 millimeter.
You are. A lot of people are. That's interesting.
Well,
And why?
one is with 35 millimeter, the camera lenses are a lot better. You have a negative. You have a physical copy of the anomaly.
Mm-hmm.
Where with the digital camera, cell phones, there's not a hard copy.
Right.
You can Photoshop it. There's apps out there where you can insert images of, quote, a ghost into these images.
Mm-hmm.
Where with a 35 millimeter camera, you can do things like that, but it's you can tell it's been faked, been changed. Where
Mm-hmm.
with digital, it's really hard unless you know what you're looking for.
Right. Well, you see all that stuff going on right now on YouTube, you know, all the mock videos and things like that with special effects.
Oh God, yeah. If a 13-year-old or a 10-year-old can, you know, make a YouTube video with special effects, then anyone can fake a photograph, a paranormal photograph. And there's a lot of videos out there on YouTube that claims to be, oh no, this house is haunted, and they'll watch these chairs move and cabinets open and things being thrown out. All that can be staged quite easily.
Yeah, I agree on that one too. That's interesting. You know, a lot of people do want their 20 minutes of fame, so they'll sit there and create all sorts of things. You know, it reminds me of, and we probably touch on this. I know we get silly sometimes, but the Ghost of Mr. Chicken comes to mind. Remember that? I love that. It's one of my favorite corny, cheesy old films. You know, so you know, where he's looking for the ghost, and at the very end, you know, all this stuff starts to happen. But
Yeah,
that kind of thing. I'd like to investigate a house like that. I think that'd be very cool.
I think the favorite place that I would love to investigate, and this is going to sound really disturbing,
Mm-hmm.
is Jonestown.
Interesting. So what's the main attraction for that?
Well, you have, I think it was 918 people committed suicide
Mm-hmm.
at Jonestown, you know, men, women, children, in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
And it would be interesting to see if their spirits are still there.
Or there's some kind of a major vortex. That's what I would assume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
That
know,
many travelers.
Yeah, I mean, no one. It's probably just a overgrown field now. And if there are souls that are trapped there, who's going to help them?
Well, maybe you should go out there and check it out. But I think you're right. I mean, I'm beginning to wonder with things like that it's like a null zone. Where do they go when they transfer out under those circumstances?
Yeah, I mean, suicide is, I mean, it is a very tragic thing that for a person to go through, especially a family. But at the same time, it's interesting what happens with the soul. How do they react once they realize, hey, you know what? I just messed up. Um,
Yeah.
What can they do and not do? I mean, when dealing with a suicide, at least from a paranormal point of view, you have to approach it with compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where, as an investigator, and training comes in, where you have to sit down with the client, especially if it's the client who has just lost a loved one.
Right.
You have to sit there and very tactfully explain what happened, explain any information that you're getting from the person who committed suicide, and explain why a soul will take their own lives.
Mm-hmm. Right. And you've done that, right?
Yes, many times.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that's not to be taken, lightly.
Right.
Because there's a lot of emotions from the clients and from the spirit itself. Because you're dealing with raw emotions. Why did this person kill themselves? They had everything going for them. And I try to explain to them, there are reasons why a person will leave this world from a soul level. It might be because it's too much for their soul to handle.
Mm-hmm.
It's a situation where they can't handle the learning experience that they have to go through. They're not ready yet to experience it.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it could be that they need the family, the loved ones that they're tied with, to experience a different type of grief, which is part of the learning experience of a soul.
Mm-hmm.
So there's many reasons why.
Right. I always think of the entity attachment also. I think that there was a lot of, you can call it whatever kind of possession, entity possession, electronic possession, but I think that is also a possible way insofar as why somebody would off themselves because of the attachment pushing them into that afterlife. And another thing I would say is that to me is concerning because then it tells me that the entity itself wanted them in that other dimensional space or realm. And at that point, I have to ask, what do beings like you think about that, and what would you do?
Oh boy. What I've done in the past with suicides is, listen to their story, relay the information, and help them cross over.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's quite easy. Other times it's emotionally hard for both parties because there's a lot there's a lot of guilt. Also, there's a guilt from a religious point of view that since they committed suicide, that either they're not worthy to cross into heaven or they're going to get stuck into like a purgatory, middle ground area, or they're going to go to hell. And fortunately, that's not the case. They can cross over at any time. There's no judgment against them. This is from what I understand.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you.
From an investigator and also from a medium.
Right.
That it's not their fault that they committed suicide. Mm-hmm. They just weren't ready to experience a situation, or they're having a hard time in the past life and this life to go through a certain situation. Mm-hmm. They don't know how to handle it yet.
Right.
They might have 3-4 more chances or tries to get through the situation they're in until they can move on to the next level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes me wonder. It's very, very interesting. Now, I don't know if you've actually had a near-death experience yourself. Have you ever done or have had a near-death experience where you saw the afterlife?
Only when I told the wife I paid for one item that was not the right price. Then she was about to kill me. That was a near-death. No, I haven't had a near-death experience, and from what I've understand, a lot of people have different versions of it.
Hmm.
Some of them will talk about, they were overcome with angels who showed them, heaven and hell. Others will say that they were taken to a beautiful city
Hmm.
full of beings who was
Right.
able to communicate. There was love, there was healing. So I think each person has their own experience, and I think some of it has to do with their interpretation. Maybe the spirit world is trying to show them something that they can comprehend.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
within their realm of reasoning.
Right. Well, I think it's also programming too. That can be a possibility of their belief systems, manifesting in the other dimensional spaces. And I remember my mother telling me she had a near-death experience when she was a kid, and she saw heaven. She said they took her to heaven, and that she was with all these angels and divine beings, and then she heard her mother's voice, and she came back. So that's fascinating to me when I see things and hear things about that. I find it very, very interesting to wonder, where they go, how long do they stay, if it's just an apparition of their own state of mind, and does it eventually just incinerate itself, and then what other parts of their essence goes someplace in another direction or something. I know it sounds.
Oh yeah. I mean, I still struggle to this day, what's going to happen with the soul, with my soul, when I die?
Hmm.
You know, am I going to see what I've been experiencing? Am I going to see, the eternal city, the mansions? Am I going to see God, or am I going to see another reality, another
Hmm.
dimension?
Right. Seems like you'd
So,
be in another dimension or reality, but it's also depending on how you live your life, in my opinion. But I know you're a good soul. But I mean, speaking generically, I think it's how people conduct themselves from day to day is where they're going to wind up insofar as the space-time continuum or configuration goes. Seriously, it's like a portal. You either go into the right destination or you don't. But what concerns me the most, John, and we probably discussed this before, is some people here are just these like very evil kind of entity control people that I don't think have any connection as their spirit or oversoul or source or anything, divine. And that is it's been making me wonder where they're heading. It seems to me like they're just going into a void. And
mhm.
also, I'm wondering if there's something in between the spaces that's creating more paranormal, supernatural activity because they can't cross over or they can't move on because of their lifestyles and what they were doing here while they were operating on this timeline.
You see, I'm in two minds with that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
one way I look at it is maybe we have a group or an influx of new souls coming in onto our plane. And what I mean is, when dealing with reincarnation stuff, every one of us at some point will be a murderer. We will commit a crime. Just part of the learning experience of the soul to develop and to grow and what have you. And I wonder if there's a new batch. I know that's not the word I want to use, but if a new batch that's coming in and they're brand new, and that's why we are seeing a lot more atrocities going on, a lot more hate, a lot
Mm-hmm.
more crime.
Right.
Is this a group or let's say an upcoming class that needs to experience this,
Very
or
interesting.
is there something else going on from the other side? Is there an influx of lower level influence?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I tend to think that that's, in my opinion, I think that those that can't ascend, that have, probably not conducted themselves the right way, probably are kind of trapped to some degree or earthbound, and probably have to keep coming back until they can break orbit and frequency. That's just my own state. It could be my own perception of the way I see things, but it's a possibility. But yeah, I think there's something definitely going on where this is a big point in the continuum where people have to really make a decision if they want to go to higher overtones and really go into the vastness of the multiverse, or just stay here and just live the world of chaos and motion. And I don't think anybody wants to do chaos. I don't like negativity and evil. I can navigate anywhere, but I get tired of it after a while. So I can't imagine living eternally doing things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I would have thought there would have been a change in the human nature by now.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And from what I'm seeing in the world, there's so much hate, so much negativity. Is there a spiritual battle that's going on that we're not seeing?
Oh, I think so. Definitely. I think it's a
And
spiritual on many levels and also technological. Yeah.
yeah, and I wonder if that's one reason why there's been a slight uptick in paranormal events.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You
totally.
know, one thing I haven't seen a lot of investigators do, if we have this technology of EVPs, contacting the other side and what have you, I haven't seen anyone ask, can you tell us, are we in trouble?
Have you asked that question?
I've tried a couple of times and
Mm-hmm.
I get no response. So,
Interesting.
so I don't know if I'm asking the wrong question, if I'm not doing it correctly, or if it's one of those, we can't tell you. The human race has to learn on its own.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that that those on the other side will allow us to self-destruct.
Mm-hmm. I don't think we're designed to self-destruct because I have always talked about this, but it's we're multidimensional beings living simultaneously, which means we're not just here, we're actually out in the cosmic design. We are permeating beyond the illusion of space and time and beyond this configuration, if you ask me. So I do think that we have that capability to assist ourselves from a multidimensional space. In other words, your oversoul, your soul star,
Yep.
which is basically an aspect of you in a multidimensional space, can assist you as an angel, a guardian angel, whatever you want to call it, and that will help navigate and assist us. That's why we will always find our way home, so to speak, in my opinion, because of the
Hmm.
cosmic compass, not because of anything we're doing here, but because when we come from the stars, we go home to the stars, and that is our compass. And in my opinion, I mean, that's a lot of people that I think that get assisted by divine forces, I think is an aspect of them, quite honestly, to some degree, merged with source, merged with creation.
Yeah. Oh, I
But
agree.
and yeah, no, you make some very good points there. And I think that mankind is, he really does need a wake up call to some degree. And especially in a day where we have technology so in our face, we need to take a step out of it for a second and just process who we are as real spiritual, multidimensional beings. And we can still be scientific, but have a balance. I think a balance is a really big deal. So without
Yeah.
balance, it's like, and that's another thing, it seems like everything is off balance. That's one of the reasons things don't feel right. Another thing is a lot of people are getting really, really sick this time of year. I mean, okay, so we do have people getting the flu, but it seems like there's more of an epidemic of illness, more toxicity, more things that are happening where there's a weakened immune system. And now that can be environmental, but also electromagnetically speaking, that can be energetic.
Yeah. It's funny that you bring that up. And, today the wife and I were watching the current season of the X-Files.
Mm-hmm.
And the one that was on last week, I guess there's some sort of plague that's going on that's man-made and only alien DNA can cure it. And it's affecting everyone from the medical field to law enforcement, to the infrastructure, those who run the infrastructure like power plants and what have you. And my wife looked at me and she said, that can happen at a drop of a hat
Mm-hmm.
in this country. It wouldn't take much to have the government let loose some sort of pathogen and wipe us out.
Oh yeah, biowarfare is big. Yeah,
Yeah.
they've been doing it forever. I mean, it's just depending on what level they use. Yeah.
And she goes, I wonder if, again, this is back to the spirit world, would they give us heads up? Would we see more events of people seeing like the Virgin Mary?
Mm-hmm.
Would that be a warning sign that we're in trouble?
That's very interesting. And then once again, I have to, because of the Project Bluebeam, they can actually create those scenarios of seeing the holy, whatever you want to see, whether it's Mother Mary or Jesus or whatever deity you're interested in worshiping. It's going to be something like that too, where they can actually project that through the hologram. So once again, you have to ask yourself what's live and what's Memorex. But I think you make some really good points. I was just, I was just on Space Boys Universe just before I hit the show here. I did a live interview, and I have to tell you, we were discussing this very same thing where it's just like, you have to really use discernment at this point in the continuum because anything is possible here. We have such levels of technology that are so enhanced and advanced that you just have to use your wits, be logical and assess things accordingly and keep your spiritual design, of course, your faith, whatever it is you have. But yeah, it's really interesting. It's very strange. I don't know how to say it, but if I had a gravestone, I'd say, man, I have to leave something humorous if I even have a gravestone when I transfer out this point in the continuum. But yeah, it's almost comical.
I mean, it's like I said, there's a change coming. And I can't place from a medium point of view, I can't put my finger on it, but there's something that's about to happen, and it's been bugging me. And I know I've tried EVPs, you know, with the spirit guides and say, hey, you know, can you give me some insight on what is coming? Because I wouldn't prepare. Now, I'm not saying, you know, it's a doomsday prophecy or anything like that, but I think it's going to be a change in the human perception of ourselves and the universe.
Right.
And one thing that has struck me really fascinating is SpaceX launched, a satellite just this past week, some sort of secret satellite, and it's gone missing.
Oh yeah, I heard that too, but I think that we all decided that it was cloaked and not missing. But go ahead.
But I'm thinking, well, you know, I wonder if they're using it as a cover story. It's gone missing, but it's being used for ET purposes.
Highly possible. Well, there's basically two parallels to that, because it could be insofar as a kind of a killer satellite, insofar as keeping whatever is out there from coming in here, but also it's also keeping everybody here from going out there. So that's the double whammy. And we're also seeing that these black satellites also correlate to mind control and also particle beam weapons and all kinds of different technologies which are about remote accessing data, whether it's a computer or a launch pad or somebody's brain, literally. So we have some issues that we need to resolve with these types of people who have access to the global warfare program, which is really, in my opinion, the biggest beast we're going to have to confront here on the timeline. I think that's really what we need to look at is the misuse of covert warfare and the misuse of technology and learn to balance that. But I think that they're trying to keep everybody here. And I don't think they want the star beings ascending out of here and going to other sectors in the multiverse. I think that they're really, truly trying to keep everybody encapsulated on this world. I don't think it's going to work. Another thing I was going to say, too, these satellites, we need something to be able to combat these satellites. And the only thing that's going to be able to do that is an outside force, something outside. You know what I mean? So we are dealing with an alien intelligence that's going to have to intercept at some point in the continuum to assist us, in my opinion. That's just my opinion and my assessment, because we have phenomenal technology right now, which is very Star Wars beyond Star Wars. Literally. I'm not talking the stupid Star Wars that they used to have. They started a long time ago. We're talking major crap. So, yeah. Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think there is some correlation between the paranormal with hauntings and ghosts and ETs.
Oh, yeah, I think they're all correlated. And that's another thing, when you're dealing with holographic, and I don't know where you stand with this. In my opinion, I believe we're in a holographic design work. In other words, we manifest a reality and it appears. And depending on whatever it is, it's going to show itself to some degree. I think that's part of this, this whole agenda where people see things but I think they're all connected. I think the energy is just a signature in another dimensional space, which appears as something else. So I'm not sure what you see with that, but.
I understand what you're saying, and if you asked me that question a couple of years ago, I would have said, I think you're kind of reaching it. But within the past year to 2 years, I kind of give you some credit on that. I think it might be happening, and this is why. You ever heard of what's called the Mandela effect?
I hear that all the time. Yeah, a lot of people mention it.
And there's been a couple of celebrities who's passed in the past year. And I remember telling my wife, it's like, he's dead. He died 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I know this person died, but now I'm being told he's dead. And my mind's like, no, he's been dead for a while. There's no way he could have just passed away. Mm-hmm. That's the Mandela effect. Something had to be reset.
It's like a glitch in the matrix. It reminds me of deja vu to some degree, doesn't it? And how many times have you had deja vu? I mean, regardless of what you see. In the old days, it used to be more common, in my opinion. I don't know if many people are actually experiencing that anymore.
I haven't really come across a lot of people saying, it's a deja. I know. I was just here. It's like a deja vu. Now, I've had it many, many times. I'm pretty sure your listeners have had it also.
Right.
But it's almost not as common.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I haven't heard recently is people losing track of time.
Mm-hmm.
I was just driving. It was at 2:00, and now it's 4:00. And I've only gone 10 miles. Haven't heard anything like that lately.
Interesting. No missing time then, or they don't have recall of it.
Yeah, exactly. I haven't heard a lot about current UFO sightings, except the one that was just thrown out on Facebook on the internet a couple weeks ago about the Air Force chasing down a UFO.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, you don't hear about that. You don't hear about any more of those crop circles. I know it's just weird. It seems like there's a big shift in the paranormal, and everything's kind of being hidden again.
I think you're right. It's almost, or maybe there's a distraction, but yeah, I agree with that. It's almost like becoming digitized and swept away when it comes down to what people have been pursuing as far as investigations and the anomalies and the supernatural. Well, it could be a blend into some of the technologies that are being distributed too. I think everything is getting kind of entwined and entangled, and that's another thing. We're really mixed with technology right now. Spirit and technology are almost becoming a merge to some degree. So that's probably what we're seeing as well. Of course, entities like electricity, as you know, spirits, right? So, and electricity is all over these devices and all the technology they use.
One thing I'm surprised I haven't read about, and especially if the government hasn't done it, is trying to get a spirit and use them as a weapon or some sort of spy tactic. Can you imagine what would happen if if we were able to take a ghost and say, okay, I want you to go over there and do this for us?
Uh-huh. Well, they do have shadow walker types, but we are the kind of, I don't say we're ghosts, but we are spirits and bodies. We are, we do have these capabilities. So when they induct us into covert technologies, we become kind of like that in a different way. We become the shadow walkers or the spies. And even though I think that the oversoul is the ultimate spy bird, though, because, we usually, and in my opinion, I think we do have life review to some degree when we transfer out. But that whole, we already know everything. It's just that we're not tuned in or plugged into that circuitry, in my opinion. It's like the full Akashic. You know your destiny. And you probably know the whole world and what's going to happen in the illusion of, but you just don't plug into it, or maybe you're not switched on 100% into it. But I know that you're aspects of who you are is just like anybody else would know. We already have the outcome. It's just that we're not plugged into that situation. And also there's a timeline thing that's going on. We were talking about the timelines, and I think that has a lot to do with it as well. We're dealing with multiple timelines, and sometimes I think that these things get so close together that they almost merge, and that becomes, in my opinion, a distortion. So, I could be just rambling on and on and on, but to me, it just seems like this is a world where everything and anything can happen, and it's all based on a frequency and a modulation and a wave and a signature, and it's identifying the right signature to be able to navigate. We want to pick the right road, right galactic highway to travel on, right? Or traverse.
Right. I mean, I think right now with everything that's happening in the world, with the media, bombarding us with, negative information about this, that, and the other. Yeah,
it's petty. Yeah.
It is, and it's taking a toll on us psychically.
Oh, absolutely. That's why I tell people to turn their TVs off. I mean, these mainstream media, they're toxic out the wazoo.
Oh, God,
all they do is propaganda, negativity, hostility, and just inciting. I'm so sick of them. I can't stand it. You know where I stand with that, but yeah. It's not healthy. It's not energetically healthy. And the bottom line is we don't need to be around that anymore. And if somebody has that and does that for a living and then goes home, I don't know how they function. They must be alcoholics or something. I can't imagine people living that life and being that life. It's just it's not right. At what point do they break away from their own careers and say, "Man, we got to resign"? It's ridiculous. Yeah.
But I wonder if that's, part of the government trying to keep us preoccupied, not to be tuned into ourselves, not to be tuned into the universe. I mean, if we got rid of all the negative stuff off of TV, and got rid of not saying get rid of all technology, but limit it and start focusing on meditation, prayers, I'm pretty sure we could change the course of humanity.
Of course. I agree with you. Yeah, absolutely. You're changing the whole frequency. Right now it's so saturated, but something's got to give here. And of course, it's all tied into covert warfare programs, in my opinion, mind control and social engineering, which they've been doing forever, this social engineering. And now it's mainstream media and the Hollywood industry, music industry, all these places. And I mean, everybody loves entertainment to some degree. But it is entertainment. It's nothing more than entertainment. And if people look at it other than that, then that's when they get lost. But yeah, we could easily clean up the neighborhood, so to speak, with clearing out all the debris with television and the misuse of dirty electricity.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, it's just getting so saturated, but I can't sit here and hold everybody's hand, and neither can you. But the idea behind some of the research you do with supernatural and the paranormal would be to look to the past to see what we can do in the future, or look to see maybe you can get a signature of some kind or some kind of an information or information pertaining to a spirit that might help mankind down the road. I mean, it's just like scrying or anything else. There might be something there on a historical benchmark or a spiritual benchmark that can help and assist mankind in his course. And I think that's a big deal because they've erased our history, or they're trying to. They've literally decided that they want to do an erasure when it comes to our history. Even in America right now, they're trying to do an erasure like nothing ever transpired. And it's absolutely insanity in motion. I mean, come on, talk about denial. Good grief.
Well, that's a big issue here in Virginia.
Right.
I'm pretty sure you've seen it on the news where they're talking about trying to get rid of all the Confederate monuments here in Virginia.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, well, okay, you're getting rid. You're trying to erase an event that happened in America, that formed America. It's part of our history or culture. Taking it away is not going to make it not ever happen.
Exactly. Yeah. They're trying to paint a zebra a different color, and it's still a zebra. It's the bottom line. People are really triggered and they're programmed, and they need to get over that aspect because it was never like this. In my opinion, I don't think it was ever like this prior to a couple of years ago, and all of a sudden it spiked up with this weirdness. So I think these people are either sleeper cells that have been activated and programmed, or there's something else happening. But yeah, I'm so proud of our history, and I don't know why people would be ashamed of the American history in any form of dimensional space. And as you know, I think we had this discussion, but if I'm not mistaken, you come from an old family, don't you? Here?
Yes.
I thought so. I did too. I think we might have even, I don't know if your family came over the Mayflower or not. I can't remember now. I've talked to so many people.
My family came over on the Savage side. I mean, we were the family was originally called Gardenier, which came from France, and we actually came over with Lafayette to fight in the Revolutionary War. Right. And we stayed ever since.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's kind of.
I come over on the Mayflower on my mom's side too, and then we had we were in every battle. My ancestors were in every battle. So, and we also came from a lot of royalty and royal bloodlines, and also connected to presidents and everything else. So, I mean, I'm very proud of our lineage, and I think that people should embrace America and the freedom and the spirit of America versus trying to pervert and distort it and judge it and be the persecutor and the judge and jury against what our ancestors did. My goodness. They should be kissing the ground. When people get taken prisoner in foreign countries, they come back here and they kiss the ground for a freaking reason, folks. And I think that that's a big deal. You're never going to see this country again if you don't watch out, people. You think you're going to get a better place and everybody's going to be singing Kumbaya globally. You're sadly mistaken. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, one of the things I've run to, and I know this is not paranormal related,
I
but
know. It's okay.
But
we do this sometimes.
You and I go off in different tangents.
I know.
It's funny. Here in Virginia, racism is alive and well. I see it all the time. And I was talking to a fellow in class who is a diehard Democrat. She's a Black American. And she's like, there's racism and, the Confederate Army was against slaves. And I said, hold on for a minute. You're telling me that the blacks are the only people on this planet that were slaves. And she goes, well, they're the most exploited. I said, okay, right. Let me help you with a little history. Rome enslaved a lot of people in the Middle East. Rome made slaves out of the English. You don't see them running around crying, saying, hey, I want restitution from Rome. Everyone is slaves. Everyone has been slaves. And right now, we're all slaves. We're all slaves to the government. We're all slaves to the dollar.
That's right.
What happened, 150 years ago, it was bad, but at the same time, it was your own country members, different tribes that was selling you guys out.
Exactly. Thank you. And that's another thing people need to understand, that they were slaves. The blacks were selling black slaves. I mean, come on.